ever gotten to a point in your life where you realize that the path you're on no longer fits? The problem with this is knowing that and actually doing something about it are two very different things. Pivoting careers, starting over, and putting yourself out there in a new way can feel terrifying. So much so that so many of us never actually take the leap. It feels too far out of your comfort zone, and it feels like you've already invested way too much time into the path that you're currently on. Why would you throw that all away? My guest today knows that feeling firsthand. I'm sitting down with Jesse Kleinman, an individual who started her career as a speech-language pathologist, and through a series of big, uncomfortable, but very intentional steps, Jesse completely pivoted from her career as a speech-language pathologist into the world of digital marketing and design. Now she helps clinicians and small business owners show up online with more clarity, confidence, and purpose, and build real community through their digital presence. We're going to be talking about stepping out of your comfort zone, navigating life transitions, trusting your transferable skills, and using digital marketing not just to grow a business, but to connect with other people in a really meaningful way. I'm super excited for you to hear her insights. If you are someone who is ambitious, but insecure and hesitating to take that leap, if you're scared to outgrow the version of you that everyone else has come to know, or you feel called to do something different, but you don't yet trust yourself enough to move, this conversation is going to challenge you in the best way possible. And if you're someone who wants to build real confidence and self-trust from the inside out, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because it's not just this interview. Twice a week, we put out episodes to help you rebuild your relationship with yourself and improve the way that you're showing up in your day-to-day life. Okay? Let's get into this. Welcome to the Mindset Gym podcast, where we exercise your way of thinking to help unlock your hidden potential. I'm your host, Emily Irwin, a registered nurse and holistic nutritionist with a passion for all things health, fitness, and personal development. All right, let's get into it. Hi guys, welcome back to the Mindset Gym podcast. I am joined today by Jesse Kleinman. Jesse, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I would love if you would start off by telling us a little bit about what your career trajectory has been, how you got started in speech-language pathology, and what kind of prompted you to make the pivot into digital marketing.
Yeah. So I think when I first started out, I actually didn't know that I wanted to be a speech therapist. I originally went to school for biomedical engineering, believe it or not. Didn't last very long. I'm not a math person. So I ended up in speech pathology. I feel like because I loved psychology, I loved helping people, and I loved working with kids. So I was a pediatric SLP. And I was an SLP for 7 years. I think over the course of those 7 years, I'm a very empathetic person and I get very invested in my clients, still do. But it's different when you're working with families that really need your support. And I think I lost a little bit of myself in that. And I always had an eye for creative stuff, design. For as long as I can remember, I was playing around on the computer and designing, whether it was pen and paper or on the computer. So it was always something that I gravitated towards. And then when I figured out that there was a way for me to kind of mesh my background in speech pathology with my love for design and tech stuff, it kind of just like snowballed into an actual thing. I was doing it on the side for a little while I was working at a private practice, and then I built a digital marketing agency. I'm a creative content strategist now for healthcare entrepreneurs, health and wellness practitioners, private practice owners. So I really help them create strategic content through intentional design and just refining their messaging so that it resonates with more of their ideal clients. So I love what I do now. I feel like I saw the other side of things working at a private practice, working at a special education private school, and I saw how busy clinicians are and how much help they needed. And I'm just so grateful that I'm able to work with clinicians all over the world. I even have a client in Singapore. So it's pretty cool, my trajectory. Thinking back on it now, I don't talk about it that often, so it's kind of fun when I'm reflecting back, but that's kind of how we got here.
That's awesome. And actually, I'm a nurse, so I can relate to a lot of the things you say about working in healthcare, especially the getting too invested in your patients and taking that home with you. That is probably my biggest struggle as well. But that's awesome that you found a way to kind of redirect the creative energy in a way that wasn't going to drain you so much. But 7 years in a career is no small thing. So, like, did you have any fears going, like, making that leap to doing digital marketing full time?
Yeah. I think at the time I I don't know. I feel like I had lost so much of myself in the career that I didn't know that this was going to be like a full-time thing. I kind of was like, I need a break. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I think when I first started doing it, I was honestly just looking to make extra money. I was living in New York City and I could not afford things just even on the salary that I had. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this as a side hustle. I actually started, funny enough, doing graphic design for a gym, a local gym. And then I think I got the confidence from there to just like pitch myself to other clinicians and be like, hey, I do this thing. Um, and I think what I started doing versus what I do now is also so different. So I'm still trying to find my footing and what exactly it is that I want to focus on. Um, but I feel like, I don't know, I definitely was scared, but I think I knew that I could always go back. And I still have my C's. Like I didn't get rid of anything in terms of my certification. So I think I know that I always have that to fall back on, whether it's doing it on my own or working for someone else. And so I think knowing that I had that kind of behind me, um, allowed me to kind of like lean in fully into this, even though it was scary.
I think that's such a good way of approaching it, and it's nice that you kind of had that like stepping stone where like the initial thought was not to do it full time. It was just kind of a thing you did on the side that you eased into doing more fully, and I think that's kind of encouraging for people to hear if there's other people that are doing things on the side right now that there is an option down the line for them to potentially make that their full time thing. When you kind of reach that point where you decided, this is going to be more of a full time endeavor for me, what was the response from like friends and family? Did you get any pushback from people when you kind of said you were going to leave your career?
Yeah. I did get a little pushback. Not anything crazy. I feel like I didn't really know what I was getting myself into just yet. Um, Yeah, it was kind of just like it felt like a natural progression because people knew that I was doing this stuff on the side. Well, my job at the time didn't know, obviously. But my friends and family knew that I was doing this stuff on the side and they were super supportive about it. I don't think I really knew what exactly I was doing yet. I was originally helping people with course and digital product launches and I still do that side of things in a capacity, but not the same way that I once was. Um and I think the only reason I felt fully comfortable doing it was because I had the support of everyone and because I basically pre-signed contracts for some of the people that I was doing work on the side with for like a later date. And then I decided with my practice at the time that I was going to leave at this date. And so it felt like I had kind of like, okay, this is enough that'll last me X amount of time and then we'll see what happens kind of thing. Um, there was a thought or fear, I guess, that I would just end up back where I was, but it wasn't like I was miserable. I just knew that I wanted something different.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach, and it's nice to know that like you have that career as a speech language pathologist as kind of a backup if things didn't work out, and like worst case scenario you're back to where you are right now. Exactly, like nothing gets worse by you trying to do this thing. It's probably very comforting having a little bit of a runway going into it, so you kind of know where you're going. Did you find, because it is a really major shift going from like a career in healthcare to a career in digital marketing and design, did you find there was a bit of an identity shift going from one to the other, and what was that like kind of transferring between the two?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's funny because in the field, a lot of SLPs talk about having imposter syndrome. Like it's a primary topic, I feel like, especially before you find your niche or your specialty, you're always saying, I'm an imposter, I'm an imposter, I don't know enough about this. Cause there's just so many different, like, on the nursing side of things, there's so many
Yes.
different things that you can focus on. And there's also, if you're working in a private practice, even if it's a specialty practice, you're going to end up with different types of kids.
Yes.
So you can never feel like you know enough or doing enough, even if you take a course or get that certification. It doesn't mean that you're uniquely qualified to work with that child. And it takes time. And I feel like that took a toll on me as a speech therapist. And that was part of what also exhausted me about the field because I never felt like I was doing enough. I don't think that necessarily went away. I think I still feel a lot of that imposter syndrome in what I do now because I've changed the offers that I have, the things that I do. And I'm new to this, and I feel like I'm always like waiting for the other shoe to drop or someone to question me. And funny enough, like I haven't really had that experience. People are really excited that I have the background in speech pathology, whether it's speech therapist, occupational therapist, nutritionist, like they just like that I have the clinical background and I'm not just a random designer or social media manager. Not that I call myself that, but they just like that I don't have or that I have that background. Um, so I feel like the more I hear that from people, the more I'm like, okay, I belong here and I'm doing something that makes sense for me and for my clients, but it's definitely going to take time for me to fully feel like I'm filling those shoes.
Yeah, I mean that's a big help that you're working with people kind of in a similar field and you're coming with some understanding of what their experience is like. You kind of have that healthcare background to help you understand where they're coming from. But
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to I kind of on both fronts, I guess, is like from the healthcare side, just like you said, you could study everything, you could study every textbook, take every course. You're still going to get patients that don't fit that brief at all and are going to
Yep.
challenge what you know. And just like the imposter syndrome is constant because it never feels like you know enough to show up in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And same with social media and, content creation, anything like that. There's so many constant changes and so many different things that are happening. It's mind-boggling sometimes to keep up with all that.
Yep. Yeah.
Did you find there were any skills that you gained from being a speech language pathologist that helped you in your career in digital marketing?
Yeah, definitely my communication skills. I feel like being able to ask questions, in a unique way, particularly with parents, because I used to be terrified. I remember when I first started, when I was a clinical fellow, I was terrified of talking to parents. I would actually like black out during the meetings. And I remember everybody on the team would always tell me, "You did such a great job." I'm like, "That's funny because I don't remember anything I said." But I'm glad you think so. So it was always really scary for me, one, to feel like I was being put on the spot, but also just like to communicate with adults because I was primarily speaking with children. So I think that for sure. And then honestly, a lot of like my clinical knowledge, especially with my speech therapy, occupational therapy, and PT clients, I use that in supporting their content creation because I know what parents are asking and what people need to hear from these accounts and from these practice owners. So I feel like a lot of my clinical expertise is still very woven into a lot of what I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because I looked at some of your content too, and I was kind of looking at the things you do, and I think some of them are like handouts and things like that for people in the healthcare field. So that's really helpful that you have that knowledge to bring to it. So it's not just kind of like generic advice or kind of copying the information they give you. You have clinical expertise to kind of feed into it.
Yeah.
Do you think people, like generally speaking, people who are looking at potentially making a big career pivot or trying something really new, do you think they underestimate how transferable their skills are?
Yes. I would say yes and no. I think sometimes we know subconsciously that we have skills, but we don't know how to position them in a way that makes sense for that job. And I don't think I even realized the value that my clinical expertise would bring into what I was doing until, I don't know, maybe even a year into it. You hear it enough times that you're like, "Okay, yeah, that makes sense." But before that, I wasn't, like, pitching myself as, "Oh, I was a former speech therapist, and that's why I should be your designer," because it was just, I'm a designer, and I have a background in it, but it was, like, something I, like, whispered on calls. It was almost like I was having the imposter syndrome of leaving the field and having one foot in and one foot out too. So I do think that people don't realize that a lot of the skills that they currently have can be applied to a lot of different things. Um, but I also think part of us knows that. It's just a matter of knowing how it translates. I mean, you can kind of reposition anything when it comes to messaging in the way that you want it to be if you're applying for a different job or if you're creating the job for yourself. It's just a matter of like boiling it down to something that can then apply to that thing. But sometimes you kind of have to do it to realize.
Yeah, I think you're right. Sometimes it's one of those things where, like, logically, you know that there is skills you have that are going to work in the field you're trying to go into. And it's not until you get in it and you do it that you're like, oh, this thing I was doing back then actually kind of helped me now. And then it, like, you kind of see how these little things you've picked up over the years all kind of apply to the things that you're currently doing now. But you're right. It's easier said than done, I guess, to understand that lesson. It's kind of something that you have to experience and then get comfortable with over time.
Yeah.
Going into the like transfer between careers, were there any mindset shifts that helped you make that pivot and kind of helped you deal with the imposter syndrome of it?
That's a good one. Um, I think for me, knowing, like I said, that I had that thing to fall back on, it was like, what's the worst that could happen? I would maybe embarrass myself a little bit because I would either go crawling back to where I came from or I would start my own thing. I think I always knew that had like an entrepreneurial side. I know my dad always wanted me to have my own practice. And part of that was like ingrained in me. He's an entrepreneur. So I think it just was like something I saw growing up too. Um, yeah, I think knowing like what's the worst that could happen and also just feeling like I could lean into something that was more of my passion as a career, like, knowing that was even an option, the way that things unfolded for me was really unique and happened very quickly. Um, it didn't feel quick in the moment because I was working, like, 60, 80 hours, but, the way that it unfolded, I feel like helped me slowly gain confidence, and know that there was something here. But I think when I first started, I had no idea. Like, I genuinely was just like, "Okay, this is a side thing. I can make a couple extra bucks. It is what it is." And then, yeah, I think by the time that I was actually doing it full time, I knew that there was something there, but I didn't know how long it would last. And I still have that feeling. It's like, okay, this is good for now, but who knows if this is going to last another couple of years. Um, so yeah, I would say like, what's the worst that can happen? And also, I had taken at that point in my life, I had taken so many other risks that had paid off that I think I knew that it was going to be okay no matter what. Um, because all of them had, even if it wasn't at first, it didn't feel good, all of them in the long run, when I looked back on it, really were positive for me. I mean, I moved into New York City by myself after being in a long-term relationship, and I was never like really living alone, so that was terrifying. I left a job that I thought was going to be um not my last job, but I left a job that I thought was going to be more long term. Like there were just so many things that happened where I kind of put myself first, and took that risk. And I think having those experiences to pull from made it easier for me. I think if this happened like 3, 4 years ago, I probably would not have done this. To be honest, I just wasn't super confident in my abilities. I still don't feel like I'm super confident in my abilities, but I feel like those experiences helped me get to that place. And it was just like perfect timing.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like this is one of many things you've done that have been like a really big risk and kind of just, gambling on yourself in a way. And it sounds like they
Yeah.
have paid off. But I think you're right. That mindset of like, what's the worst that can happen is so helpful because I think so often people are faced with a situation where they could take a big risk and they could do something really different and they start to catastrophize and think about, it could be really awful, all these things could happen, but like actually boiling it down to what is legitimately the worst thing that could happen, I think kind of makes you realize that like the worst thing that could happen is actually something that you can manage. And
Yeah.
as scary as it is, it makes it feel a little bit more approachable to take that leap.
Yeah, and, like, I hate this. I was actually thinking about this morning, funny enough. I hate the saying, but it really is true that growth lies or yeah, growth lies on the other side of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
I don't love it, but in theory, because I don't want people to feel like you have to be uncomfortable to get to grow.
Yes.
But,
Yes.
like, there is a period of discomfort, like,
There
it's just the
is.
reality of it. I mean, after this happened, I mean, I recently moved all my family is in New York, New Jersey for the most part, and I recently moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. We don't know anybody here. Um, I would not have done this. I would not have started my business. Like, I think I'm doing things knowing like what is the worst that can happen? I'll move
Yeah.
back. What's the worst that can happen with starting this business? I'll do something else. Like, yeah, it would suck, but it is what it is and I'll figure it out. So I mean, yeah, I feel like if you're willing to bear down and like get through that short amount of discomfort to like see what's on the other side, it's totally worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're totally right. Like a lot of these big decisions, although they feel very permanent in the moment, they're not permanent. Like if it ends up being really terrible and things go really wrong, there's always the option to kind of go back to what you were doing before. And yeah, you're right. That the saying's kind of generic, but there's a lot of truth behind it. Like it doesn't mean that the risk and the change has to be uncomfortable forever, but it does require a little bit of you getting uncomfortable and trying something different.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for someone who might be listening that kind of has that pull to change their careers and try something different, but it feels like they feel like they're too far in to do something else?
Yeah. I mean, some would say that 7 years is not super long in one field, but for me, it felt pretty long. Um, I feel like for me and the way that I did things, I would recommend if you can, doing it kind of like on the side and just seeing and see what it could turn into. Like I said, what's the worst that could happen? And everybody has their first opportunity. Like everybody started somewhere. I saw a great post about this morning, but like every entrepreneur, every person started with nothing, with no knowledge, all of these things. So if you're starting with knowing nothing, so did the most famous CEO you can think of. And I mean, we're all like trying to figure it out as we go. Even people who seem like they have it all together do not, especially when it comes to social media. So I would say, like, also don't compare yourself to other people's journeys. I think a lot of what we see on social media is like, I made X amount of money on this digital resource. And like, honestly, most of it's BS. But even if it's not, just don't compare yourself to them. You don't know what their experience has been like, and your experience is completely different and valid. And what you're bringing to the table is totally unique from somebody else. And that's what makes you different and special, and lean into that.
That's such a good thing to keep in mind, especially like you said, in like social media related things, because it's all very curated and put together, and so you often see people's best sides, but like so many of us don't know what we're doing or are kind of fumbling through it along the way or like didn't know anything when we first started. And at least something I like to do that I find really helpful is like finding examples of people who seem like they have it all together now and seem like they're like eons ahead of where I want to be, but like going back and looking at like where they started and looking at what their beginnings were to be like, oh, they're actually just a human being. They actually fumbled through it the same way that I am right now. Like an example of that, I guess, like with this podcast, something I found really helpful was going to like big YouTubers and going back to like their very first videos and being like, oh, okay, okay. I see. Like not everybody had this all figured out on day one.
That's really funny.
So in your like with your work with digital marketing and design right now, do you primarily work with healthcare practitioners? What's your kind of typical clientele?
Yeah, mostly healthcare wellness practitioners, clinic owners, healthcare entrepreneurs. Um, I feel like I do have a lot of speech therapists, but that is just because of my background. I have a couple occupational therapists, some nutritionists, definitely trying to branch out into other like wellness practitioner spaces, healthcare, coaches, that sort of thing, but primarily in the health and wellness space, I would say.
Okay. What's your experience been like building the business, building a community on social media, off social media? Like what's your approach kind of been to build up those relationships?
Yeah. I definitely have a lot of conversations in DMs, which I feel like people underestimate. I know we connected on Threads. I feel like don't sleep on Threads either, because I
No.
booked 2 podcasts from there. So yeah, definitely use Threads. I feel like Threads is nice because most of the people on there are seeking community or recommendations or referrals or a network or something along those lines. And it's just a different type of like social media platform, I feel like. And when it comes to DMs, I'm not talking about like cold DMing someone. That is like ick. Nobody do that. But really like what I like to do is try to have curated like polls or question boxes that leads to a conversation. So, like if somebody is responding to a poll where I'm asking a very specific question about their experience with social media, I might respond to that message and say, like, hey, I know you're experiencing, you don't have a lot of time to create. Like, what would be one thing that could help you that I could support you with, or something like that? And it doesn't even have to be a cold pitch. It could literally just be like me saying, oh, I know you don't have a lot of time. For me, what works really well is batching content. Have you ever tried something like that? And it could also be me posting about Tell Me Lies and starting a conversation with somebody because they like that show. I think focusing less on, I don't know, like the curated part of it and more human, thinking about sharing what you would share with like a best friend and talking to them as if they're a best friend rather than it being so perfect all the time. Nobody wants that. There's definitely a big shift. I know we were talking about this earlier, but there's a big shift towards more personal content and community building, I feel like. So if you can find a way to do that naturally, I think that's totally a good idea. But yeah, I would say threads and DMs and sharing content that's real. I share a ton of stuff about my experience creating and being chronically online and what my experience is like there, pivoting, all of that sort of stuff. I don't like, personally, I feel comfortable sharing that stuff. I'm not really like keeping my experience. Not everybody is. You don't have to share your like deepest, darkest secrets for people to connect with you. You could share that you like doing car karaoke and drinking iced coffee in the wintertime, wearing baseball hats. Like those are points of connections for people. Um, and it makes them relate to you in a different way beyond just like another social media page.
Yeah, I think that's such a good approach. Like, there is kind of an art to it, especially on social media, especially now, like when we have so many, like AI and so many tools to kind of curate these things for us. It can very easily ride into like not human sounding territory, and so like it really is kind of a careful balance of like have reaching out and having the conversation, but like bringing your authentic human side to it. And I think, like you said, like inserting elements of that into the way that you communicate with people and the content that you post is such a good way to go about that. The people that you work with, like the businesses that you've worked with that you've created content for, what do you find is their biggest struggle with showing up confidently online?
Mm, a mix of things. A big one would be that they're terrified that they're going to get canceled or trolled, which is very
Yeah.
interesting, but it's because they tend to have like, I don't know, I feel like sometimes in the clinical space things are very black and white and they shouldn't be. So there's a lot there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes when it comes to that stuff. I think that's a good one that I see a lot. I would also say not feeling like they have the time, bandwidth, or capacity to create content, but knowing that they should because it'll be better for their business in the long run. Not having an eye for design. Um, yeah, time capacity, bandwidth, not knowing what to do or what to say. And just having, I mean, my saying is like, you're wearing too many hats, but let me wear the hat for you because they really are, especially if they're running a practice on their own. I mean, they're doing admin, scheduling, seeing clients, doing consultation calls, having back and forth emails. Like, they don't have the time or energy to create. And they want to. And a lot of them do want to branch into passive income territory and sell resources or grow their email list. Everybody has a different goal, get more client inquiries, but most of them just don't have the time or energy to do so. and they want help, and they want help from someone they can trust and that understands, where they're coming from in a unique way.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Like it's such a time consuming thing to do well. And
Yeah.
so like if people are trying to kind of jam it in on the side, especially people working in kind of a healthcare related field, I find the approach to healthcare things and like charting and diagnoses and difficult conversations versus the like more creative conversation when it comes to like marketing and social media, they're two very different approaches to communication, and I feel like it would be hard to kind of flip-flop between the two constantly. Of the
Yeah.
people you've worked with, like what are the biggest mistakes you see people making if they've tried to approach their social media and their marketing and stuff on their own before coming to you?
Yeah. I actually am starting a series on this because I've noticed too many things. A main one for me that's kind of a pet peeve is when I see your page and there's like 10 different fonts, templates, colors happening. If you're using a generic template, that's fine, but try to make it look cohesive. So when it comes to using the same color palette, using the same fonts, I think it can be really easy when you're using templates on Canva to get lost and either try to make too many edits and then end up changing everything, or not really knowing how to apply your colors and your branding to that template. And it's actually really easy to do. Um, so I would say making sure that you have that brand recognition, because brand recognition builds trust. And then also, like you were saying, not just throwing up posts to throw up posts, like really quality over quantity. I would rather you take more time to create and craft like a really thoughtful post than just say like something random that isn't really related, or like, oh, it's this holiday and we're closed. Like you can announce that you're closed or happy whatever, but it's not really relevant to people that are coming to your page. And then I would also say like think carefully about your bio, your name, and your pinned posts. One of my primary offers is about pinned posts, but when it comes to name and bio, to really use those keywords strategically, because that's how people are going to find you. And make sure it's really clear, like who you are, who you help, and then like next steps to work with you. Like if you have a call to action in your bio or not, leading them to your website, your email list, whatever you want to lead them to, so that they know who you are and what you're about from the jump. And you're also guiding them towards that next step.
That's such good advice. Like I think there's so many small pieces to a social media page that people don't consider. They either don't do them at all or they just kind of throw them together haphazardly, and you're right, it doesn't look very cohesive. I know a phrase I've heard you say before is like you help businesses and clinicians approach their marketing with clarity, and would you say that's kind of what you mean by bringing clarity to what they're doing, is kind of creating this really cohesive environment of all the stuff that they post?
Yeah, yeah. And I think also thinking, being super thoughtful about what your message is, what your mission is, like what are you trying to accomplish with this piece of content? Because each piece of content really should have a goal. And that's why I say don't just like throw something up. Because if you're just saying happy holidays, okay, that's really nice, but it's not necessarily getting the type of engagement that you want. Um, and it's really simple, honestly. Think about questions that patients, clients are asking you and use that as content. Like you could literally create a list from just that, and people want to see that because they want those answers. So thinking really being really thoughtful about what it is that you are putting up, so that it leads them to, okay, you're showcasing your expertise, or you're telling them about yourself, or you're telling them about this free resource. Like it doesn't always have to be promoting something. It could just be that you want to educate them, but in that you're actually showcasing your expertise, and it's building a connection with them and building trust with them, so that they know, oh, this is the person that I want to go to for X.
Yeah, like that's such good advice. Pulling from like common questions you get from patients or like things that you already do on a regular basis and just using it as a way to show your expertise versus just promoting something. Like I think it kind of runs a similar vein to having transferable skills from other jobs and applying them to like digital marketing or something different. It's you have a lot of the knowledge already in you. It's just being able to kind of piece that out and use it in a really productive way.
Yeah, what you just said actually made me think about one of the things that I was doing as a speech therapist early on, um, that I guess I didn't really realize would lend itself to this, but I was always creating resources online, and then I would be the person that people would come to when they needed help with something on the computer or creating something. Oh, Jesse, can you make this thing? So, honestly, that's a really good point because if people are coming to you, even at work, whatever you're doing now, if they're coming to you and constantly asking you that question, think about, oh, wait, one, do I like doing this? Or am I just doing it because it's part of the job? But also, like, oh, could this be applied to something else?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think everybody listening to this probably has a lot more hidden skills that they don't realize. They just have to be willing to like look for them and piece them out of the things that they're doing on a regular basis.
Yeah.
If someone was listening and they were like wanting to put themselves out there more on social media and kind of create more of a digital presence, but they feel very awkward doing that or very nervous or uncomfortable doing so, do you have any advice for someone in that position?
Yeah. It's funny because I just started posting more talking head videos on TikTok and I feel so awkward. I'm doing it, but I don't like it. I'm more of like a face-to-face person. The talking head reels just feel very awkward. Um, I honestly started creating content just for fun. I had a speech therapy page and I didn't have a goal with it. I just was doing it because I could and I liked creating quirky videos. So I feel like why not just start with something that you enjoy? Like you can do trends and do funny things that feel very you. And then over time, you'll get more comfortable in front of the camera and it won't feel as strange. And try to think about if you are doing talking reels, pretend that a friend is on the other side of things and you're explaining something to them in terms they will understand because you also need to be really clear in what you're saying. Um, and then when it comes to like carousel posts or pinned posts or static posts, just don't overthink it. As long as you have the colors and fonts and cohesive messaging, I feel like you're good. I think when it comes to those templates, it can be really easy to just like, oh, I'm going to move this one thing. I'm going to move this thing. I'm going to change this. And then you're 2 hours deep, like, oh, I just changed the whole template. So yeah, don't overthink it. And yeah, start with what feels good to you and fun for you and go from there. You don't have to do anything. You don't even have to do talking head reels. You could do faceless. Like there's tons of different things that you can try. But lean into what feels the most comfortable for you. And then it'll kind of just like start to feel more normal after that.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's such good advice. I can definitely relate to like the discomfort, especially with talking head type stuff. I remember when I filmed the first episode of this podcast, I could have vomited. I was so nervous. No idea how to do this kind of stuff. No idea how to talk on camera. Nothing at all. And I think it kind of really is like it's a trial by fire kind of thing that like you just have to be willing to not overthink it and not get stuck trying to make it perfect and just put it out there and you'll learn along the way what feels more like you and what is, a better way to show up.
Yeah, and from a marketing standpoint too, like you kind of want to just like try things in the beginning because you want to see what's resonating with people and lean into that more. So it's kind of good if you're just trying a bunch of different things because you'll learn, okay, this hook worked really well or this visual worked really well or this didn't and it flopped. Okay, I'm not going to do that again or how can I repurpose this? So it's really just like trying and seeing what happens, especially in the beginning. And I keep saying this, but like really what's the worst that can happen? um Somebody sees it. If nobody sees it, then nobody saw it, so who cares?
Exactly. But yeah, it is always like such an important like moment to experiment a little bit and see what's going to work. And I at least in my own experience have found it really surprising because the things that I think are going to work really well don't at all, and then the things that I'm like, that's not great, it's not my best work, ends up doing better than anything else. And so it's really a kind of a learning experience of just kind of throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what happens. And that's kind of where you find your audience in kind of a weird way. Through your experience of working kind of in entrepreneurship and digital marketing, what has surprised you the most?
Ooh. um I think I would probably say how much I have to do behind the scenes. Like, it seems obvious. Obviously, you have to do all that. But uh yeah, being able to do that and also take on the amount of client work that I need to live is hard. And then not being able to be at the point yet because it's a goal for this year, yet that I can like truly outsource something. I've definitely had like people help me or consultants or coaches or like project based things, but I'm not like hiring somebody yet. Um, I think knowing how much I have to do to keep the business afloat, um, and also like maintain my own sanity is overwhelming. Um, and that's with help. I had business coaches from very early on, which I think was one of the smartest decisions I ever made. The right business coach, the right one. If you can afford to do it early, I would. I feel like that helped me a lot in terms of refining my offers and just mindset things, especially from the jump because I was basically freaking out every other day. Um, but yeah, I would say that, and it's a roller coaster for sure. I feel like um I'm a pretty anxious person and I like stability and having consistency, and that's just like not
Not what
saying that you
this is.
shouldn't do this, not saying you shouldn't do this if you have anxiety, but just be prepared that, like, there's totally ups and downs. Like, I remember I had a couple months where I was like, "Okay, I can barely pay my rent this month," and then I would have the next month where it would be, like, 5 times that, and I would be making plenty. So, planning things out in a way now that I'm learning that lesson, so that I have money for those slower months, uh, and yeah, just, like, being prepared for it's a roller coaster, but it's, like, the best roller coaster you've ever been on, and I don't like roller coasters. So that's saying a lot. But yeah, I think like the fact that it's ever changing and being okay with adapting what you're doing, what your clients' needs are, and never really feeling like, I don't know, you're never really like stuck doing anything. I feel like I had to throw that idea totally out of the window. I thought I was going to always do X, Y, and Z, and my offers have changed so many times, and you're constantly refining and growing and making things better and better. So, knowing that you have to be okay with change, and comfortable with change and adapting what you might think versus what your clients actually want.
Yeah, I would imagine it's probably a huge lesson in adaptability and change because you're right, it's not stable the way that like a typical 9 to 5 job is. There is so much up and down in the kind of work you do, in the hours that you're working, in the finances of it. Like there's so many ups and downs of it, and I can absolutely resonate to the behind the scenes work because like, especially like social media, like digital anything, you see the final product online. You see the like pretty put together curated thing and it looks very effortless. It looks very like easy to throw together, and it's not until you kind of get into the thick of it and actually have to do all of the work yourself that you're like, "Oh my god, there's so much more going on that feeds into all of this than just the one post." Like it's not just that one thing. There's so much going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, and that's really why I always tell people, like, what you see on social media is not real life, and I think I remember there was a time where I was really struggling, and I wasn't vocal about it really on social media, and I was posting consistently still, like, you really would have no idea. I wasn't showing my face as much on stories, but other than that, like, you really wouldn't know. And I remember one of my friends messaged me and we were chatting and she was like, "How are you doing?" And I was like, "Honestly, horrible." And she said, "Really? You would never know." And I said, "That's why you should take social media at face value."
Yeah.
Because it's just not it's not real. Like it's really
No.
not real. And it can be, and I think people are pushing for that. It definitely can be, but it's hard, especially when it's your business. Like, there's things that are gonna happen in your life, like moving is moving, like, you're moving, you're doing all this stuff behind the scenes, but you still need to show up online. I mean, Instagram is my primary source, referral source, and where I get most of my clients, so if I'm not showing up on Instagram, I'm not getting leads, and then there goes that. So, it can definitely be tough, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard because there is an element of like authenticity and your real feelings and stuff like that going into the content that you create, but that doesn't mean that people see everything. They don't
Yeah.
see all of the hard stuff and all the ups and downs. You're still posting consistent content even when these like really major life events are going on. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard. It's a lot more behind the scenes stuff. I remember I had that same kind of feeling when I started this podcast. Was like, I knew at face value that it was going to take work. I knew there was going to be some behind the scenes work, and it wasn't until I was like in the thick of it that I was like, whoa, whoa, like this is more than I thought it was. If there's someone watching who is wanting to make a shift, they're wanting to pivot their life in some sort of major way, career or otherwise, what do you think would be a good first step that they could take into easing into that if they've done nothing so far?
Hmm. Um, I'm gonna take my move to North Carolina as an example for this one. This was something I thought about honestly since I was like 12 probably. So it was a longer dream than my entrepreneurship dream, I would say. I feel like it was something that I thought I would never do. I would never move away from my family. I would never move away from my friends. Funny enough, I remember in college I had like a whole midlife crisis because I wouldn't apply to grad school in North Carolina because I knew that if I applied, I would want to go. And I didn't apply, and then I was upset that I didn't apply. Um, the teenage college years are really something. But yeah, I think trusting that like I'm not really a big like universe person in this capacity, but like trusting that the universe has your back and that whatever's meant to happen will happen. Um, whether that's for the worse or for the better, I feel like um I know that's like a big mindset set shift for like the first thing, but I think if you can wrap your head around like knowing that like this is just one thing, this is just one event, one experience, and it's not everything. It's just your career or it's just where you're living. It's not your whole world crashing down. And even if it doesn't work out, like let's say you switch jobs, your friends and family are still going to be there to support you. Let's say you move, your friends and family are still gonna be there to support you, like, no matter what, as long as you have a strong support system, I think you can probably do pretty much anything that you want. It's just a matter of believing that you can, and I feel like a lot of the how I got here, I feel like is because of a lot of the mindset work that I did, especially I mean, I went through a lot. I won't touch on all of it, but, like, I think that I slowly through these experiences was able to train myself to know that it was going to be okay whether it was this or that um and that my life wasn't going to completely fall apart. So I know that's not necessarily one step, but I think if you can wrap your head around that, that's a really good place to start.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that that mindset shift is a really good place to kind of kick off your approach and just understanding that it's not the end of the world. It's not as serious as it seems in your head. You can, take a leap and take a risk. And even if it doesn't work out right away, trusting in the fact that it will work out eventually and all the things that you're
Yeah.
doing will make sense down the line.
Yeah, even like I love Shark Tank. So I think about like a bunch of people that have been on. I don't know why that wasn't an indication that I was going to start my own business. I've loved it for a long time, but there were so many people on there that had tried out for the show so many times. Or like American Idol. Like think about how many times people go after their dreams and they fail and they don't do it. Where they end up doing it a different way. Like they started with this product and then it didn't work out and they switched to this and then it did work. So many of the CEOs that you probably look up to and follow didn't actually start in what they're doing now and have had so many iterations of things. So, like, fall on your face and do it a different way or try again at a different point in time. That doesn't mean just because you get a no, doesn't mean that it's a forever no. It just means like a not right now, or I need to rethink this, or I need to pivot this. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to get there in some capacity somehow.
Yeah, like that's such good advice. There's so many examples out there of people who are doing like really big, really incredible things now, but their journey wasn't they tried this thing once and suddenly they were amazing at it. There is usually like years, if not decades, of them fumbling and messing things up and trying something and failing. And I think when we are kind of in that experience ourselves and we actually hit a roadblock or we fail at something or we hear somebody tell us no, it feels like that's the end, and it feels like our entire journey is like ruined, the world is crashing, everything's terrible. And it's good to look up to these people to remind us that like this is just a little blip in your story. It's not the end of it.
I actually saw a video last week that I shared with my like business mentorship group. Do you know who Jack Johnson is, the
Yeah.
musician? So his backstory, I didn't know this. I am a huge fan of his. I didn't know this story until last week. He used to be like an incredible surfer. He was like on track to be like one of the best surfers in the world, if not already was. And he had a really bad crash, and I think he wasn't able to surf, or he definitely wasn't able to compete in the same capacity. And his mom ended up getting him a guitar. I think this is the story, something like this. Don't hold me to it, but he got a guitar and he started playing music. And one of his songs, just in his local community, started gaining traction and people were listening to it. And then he obviously became this huge musician, but that was never his path. He just wanted to surf. And now he still brings his love for like his community and Hawaii and beaches into what he does. I went to one of his shows, and everything that he had in terms of decor was actually sea glass that they collected from cleaning up the beaches. And it was like a huge, I don't know, like design over the stage. So he pivoted, like he still brings his surf and his beach love into what he does now, but he never was planning to be a musician in any capacity. And now look at him.
That's such a cool story. I didn't know that either. I had never actually heard anything about his background, but like yeah, like what a cool testament to people pivoting in a really major way and it turning out really good. And also speaks to transferable skills because he's brought some of his like surfing background to that, which probably makes him more authentically him.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's very low key, like, he actually the show that I went to, obviously, there was, like, a big concert stage, but when you were walking around, just, like, getting drinks or whatever, he actually put on, like, a mini show just in the middle of that area. I was freaking out. He was, like, 5 feet away from me. I thought it was fake at first, so just to goes to show how chill he is. He wasn't even worried about being around people, like, 5 feet from them. And he just wears like a t-shirt and shorts and does him, and he's still like very authentically himself, but he's just a musician now.
So cool. It's very cool like just hearing the kind of person he is now, and it's even cooler when you hear it tied into where he came from and what he's had to go through to actually get to that point.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was a cool story.
For people listening, where can they find you? Where can they find information about your business? If there's any new projects that you'd like to tell the audience about, anything at all, I'd love to
Yeah.
hear where people can find you.
So I'm at vibrant dot digital solutions on Instagram and TikTok. TikTok is a new venture, so don't judge me. And my website is vibrantdigitalsolutions.co. I could not get .com. It was already taken. And in terms of offers, I think my Content Cabana is a great one if you are looking to start out with something. It's really those like strategic pinned posts like I was talking about. I give you 2 story backgrounds, content prompts, and video walkthroughs. So it's not those generic templates like we were talking about earlier. I really customize it to your business, your goals, leading into like next steps, like growing your email list, how they can work with you, all that sort of fun stuff. And that way you know exactly what to say. You're not staring at a blank screen. You're not overthinking your design, and you know exactly how to edit so that you can repurpose these templates in lots of different ways.
Awesome. Thank you so much. If you're listening, go follow her, go check out her business stuff. I will put all of it in the description below so you can find her very easily. Jesse, thank you so much for doing this episode with me. It was very nice to finally connect with you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you like the episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, or share the show with a friend. Your support helps the show reach even more incredible people just like you. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time at the Mindset Gym.